All right. Well, hey, welcome back. It's BJ
And Patrick.
and we're here talking about the world of real estate, and especially in Vancouver Island. And today we're going to talk about what does it cost to buy a house or a condo. We're not talking about the price of the mortgage. We're not talking about what you pay for the house. Where there's a whole bunch of extra costs associated with it that I think sometimes people aren't aware of. So we want to talk about those things. And I'm going to start with the most obvious one, which is legal fees. I think it's the most obvious one because you're going to need a lawyer or a notary to handle the transaction.
Yeah, and the price can vary on that depending on the complexity of the transaction. Like a regular single family house, maybe there isn't anything to clear off a title except for maybe a mortgage, then that's a pretty straightforward operation.
Right.
But if you sold a property and bought a property, you're kind of dealing with the lawyer twice for the same job.
Right.
So then maybe it's not double the cost, but there's an additional fee and time for registering the title, transferring title, clearing title.
Right.
Receiving funds. There's quite a bit there for the lawyer that does that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before getting complicated.
Yeah. So, and that's something that you're not going to be able to purchase a home without having a lawyer involved to make sure that your purchase registers at land titles, make sure everything gets money-wise where it needs to go, and everything is done legally and legitimately. So that's number one.
Probably important to say, like, if you're out of province or out of country, you need a lawyer locally to transfer the title.
Right.
So that's just an important. So you might have an additional cost of running it through a lawyer or notary elsewhere to communicate with a lawyer that's here that's representing you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. What else?
Well, on top of the purchase price. So if it's a new property, we have GST. There could be a GST rebate if the person qualifies for it, right? And then the property transfer tax.
Property transfer tax, yeah.
So depending on the price range, it scales up as you go.
Yeah. Yeah, property transfer tax. I'm trying to remember the numbers now.
1% on the first 200,000, 2% on the remainder, but it's not really the remainder because it increases at which price?
Is it 2 million?
2 million.
2 million? I have to look, but I have a calculator on my phone that'll do all that. So, but certainly, so there's the property transfer tax, which is, even if you're a first-time home buyer, there's a credit, but it's only if you're buying something under 500,000. So there's that. How about inspection?
Home inspection. That's just the beginning of inspections, if that's all you need.
Right.
Yeah. So for a single family house, I've seen the prices recently go really from $500 to $700 for like a house. I'm not talking about a townhouse or a condo. And then there's different levels of an inspection you can get as well, right? You can sort of get the basic, or somebody's can take. I've seen one company use like an infrared camera to see hot spots in electrical boxes to see if there's any additional. Yeah. And it's pretty normal that they would check like moisture. They all have moisture meters looking for.
Yeah. And it's pretty
stuff behind the walls.
Yeah, and one of the things I think I tell my clients all the time is, it's pretty important for the $500, $600, $700, $800, whatever. It's pretty important to do that so we know what it is that we're getting. Because we've done inspections before where things came up and we had to address it with the seller. Hey, there's this issue, and how do we resolve this? Because we need to figure out some way to take care of this before we move in. Or I've been on the other side of it where my clients have been selling the property and we've been approached. The inspection found us and we'd like to resolve this before we move in, and how does that work, and who's paying for what, and all these things get worked out at that point.
And if it doesn't get worked out, the seller is stuck with that problem, and then now it's been discovered, has to be disclosed.
Right.
So Yeah, I've always been of the mind like, well, let's try to take care of it
Right.
now,
Right.
because you're gonna have to live with that. Even if this offer collapsed, the next offer,
Right.
you're going to have to deal with this issue
Right.
anyways.
Yeah.
So hopefully all parties are willing or able to
Right.
resolve that.
Yeah, that's a pretty important. So, inspection's pretty important. Over the years, I think I can think of one client who did not have an inspection done, but did his own. But he was an engineer, so he was like, he actually put on his coveralls and went into the crawl space with his
Sure.
and did the whole. But he had the skills and the wherewithal and the ability to do his own inspection. That's not the case for most people.
It's the consumer's choice who they want. If they want to trust a home inspector, or if it's a contractor, or if it's somebody
Sure.
with relevant experience that they trust.
Yeah.
That's always up to the consumer.
Right, 100%. And there's a part two of inspections, is because if you're buying a property that's on septic, there's a septic inspection, and the cost associated with that. That cost, typically the seller will handle the cost of the pump out, but if you're acting for the buyer is still going to take care of the inspection cost.
That's traditionally how the cost has been divvied up. Right? Like, I'm not going to pay for your poop to get pumped out, but I want it inspected, but we can't inspect it until we have all the pumped out.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So that's always been a pretty normal way to approach that extra cost, right, in that inspection. So if you're selling a house with a septic field, expect that coming your way from the buyer.
Yeah. Another one in line with the inspections is if you're on well water, is to, if you don't have something indicating the quality of the water, getting the water tested.
And the amount.
Right. And the flow.
That can happen as well.
Right. Another one talking about inspections would be oil tanks.
Oil tanks, if they're still in existence, or they're maybe stored on the property somewhere, like if they're buried, right?
Yeah, and that's not for every part of Victoria, but I had a client where when we did the purchase, we found records at Saanich that showed the removal of the oil tank, but my clients decided, we want to do our own scan anyway. And so we brought somebody in and they did the scan, and lo and behold, we found another oil tank that was buried underground.
And that's a whole other ball of wax. Yeah.
And the seller had to take care of it and remove the oil tank and have the soil had to be remediated and so on. And so
I'm sure that was a surprise for the seller.
It was a huge surprise for the seller.
Having already found one and removed it.
Right. But if we hadn't have done that, and I don't remember the cost of it, because it varies, right? The cost of doing these things changes over time and varies. And so that's again, the inspections are, I think it's so important that we do, you want to do that up front so there's no surprises later.
Ideally.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what happens if we don't do that with that situation? Think about this. If we don't do that and we end up doing the purchase and we just go with what Saanich said, and then we sell the property, or my client sells the property, and somebody else does that, and now that goes back on my client. Now they're responsible for removing that tank and getting that soil remediated.
Now,
right. So for those of you, as you're thinking about the home purchase, are these inspections and these things worth doing? Yeah, they're important, for sure.
Well, we put it this way: it's an ounce of prevention.
Yeah.
That's it. For a bit of insurance, a bit of peace of mind.
Right.
That's the whole reason for doing it, right? And the idea of being able to look for those things that are, maybe it's a really small percentage chance of finding something, but wouldn't you be really glad if you did find it? And then at least you can move forward. If it has a problem, you're aware of it.
Yep.
If you accept the problem or not, right? But at least you know about it.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. And I think, the one other thing, if we're talking about a strata, is the cost of doing a review of the strata documents and the financials and everything else.
Absolutely. Right. And then again, it goes back to, like, we're realtors. We know how to, like, write contracts, write legal clauses, but then it's like, I'm not an accountant. So, like, the budget for a building, even though I understand accounting enough,
Right.
I'm not a professional in accounting. I can't give advice on it.
Right.
I'm not an engineer. I can't read I can read the remediation report. I can
Sure.
see what it says,
Sure.
but I can't comment or give advice on that report.
Right.
Completely honest, right?
Yeah.
And I think you always have to refer to the person that's the professional. So
Yeah.
other professionals can be brought in after a home inspection,
Yeah.
strata review,
Yeah.
those kind of things,
Right.
and then rely on those professionals for advice.
Yeah. So, that's just a snapshot of some of the additional costs that are associated with buying a home. There's obviously going to be moving costs and things like that we didn't get into, but this is more the kind of, things that you don't know about when you're thinking, okay, well, I bought the house for X number of dollars and that's all there is to it. There's going to be legal fees and that's it. Well, to protect yourself, to make sure you're in a good position with the purchase and you're comfortable with what you're doing, there's a few other things that you need to keep in mind. I think that'd be safe to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Always have money that you didn't plan on spending for those additional costs that
Right.
might come up
Right.
when you do find the right house. And so you got $700 on inspection. Oh, wait a minute, needs a septic pump out. Well, that's going to cost you probably close to the same amount.
Right.
And then it's the well, so it's quickly adds up. That's
Right.
for sure. And
Right.
if it's a condo, well, maybe the inspection's a little bit less money, but you're going to spend money on somebody else reviewing the
Right.
condo, the strata
Right.
documents.
Right.
So definitely budget for more than just taxes and moving, that kind of thing.
Right.
And don't buy any new furniture till you moved in, or a car. Don't make any major purchases.
Right.
Those kind of things, right?
One of the things we tell our clients, I tell my clients all the time, is don't put yourself in a situation where you're house poor, where you bought this great home, but you can't go see a movie or go out for dinner or, go hang out with your friends or whatever the case might be. And this is one of the ways we can protect ourselves is just, planning ahead. And this is one of the things we can do here when it comes to the actual purchase. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right. Well, thanks for watching today. If you haven't, please like our channel and you can share our information. That helps us a lot, putting it out to people. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, if you have any questions about real estate in the Victoria area, I would be happy to help you with that. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.
See ya.